I go to Nicaragua June 1st, 1978. The photograph we're talking about is made on July 17th, 1979. I went because I read about a place that I couldn't see that felt like it was in transformation of some kind, something I could relate to. It wasn't a full-scale war when I left or when I was reading about it. And I left on my own. I didn't know anyone. I know it seems strange, but I didn't speak Spanish. I didn't think that was an issue. I just got on a plane. Somoza was the president of Nicaragua, considered a dictator by many. 25% of the land was owned by Somoza, 25% of the factories and industries. His family had been in control of Nicaragua for nearly 50 years. Sandinistas were organizing a movement against Somoza, along with a popular insurrection that followed. Those were people who fought from their neighborhoods. So the Molotov man, who's now known as such, his pseudonymo is Beretta, Pablo Arauz. It's a photograph that's made in Esteli in the very last day of the insurrection in Esteli, where they're fighting against the National Guard headquarters, and he's hurling a Molotov cocktail made out of a Pepsi bottle. I don't think when I made the photograph, I would have known that I was going to follow the photograph for 25 or 30 years, first of all. It wasn't a concept. It was a reality that was created from the surprise of discovering what happened to the image. In a way, the series is reconstituting a process. So you begin with the outtakes, film fragments. So they were looking back at the slides that were around the roll and the shot. You can see in the black and white contact sheet my movement towards where I discover the moment. I just remember moving towards where I was hearing fire, and I didn't know quite what was happening. And then I found myself within a block of a garrison, a military garrison, where the Sandinistas had already positioned themselves closer to the walls of this garrison. And they'd obviously demobilized the tank, which allowed them to be really within 20 feet. I'm right under Pablo, 3 feet away, as low as I can be to try and capture what's about to happen. He, of course, had no idea, nor did I, what might have happened. At the moment that we're making that image, he probably barely remembered me. The garrison falls that day within hours of that moment. And Somoza, after 50 years of a dictatorship, leaves the country. It's a very, very dramatic moment that gesture continues to reference. So it's not just about Pablo, it's about that moment in history and the change of power. By framing one moment, I'm also thinking a lot about what's left out of a frame, how intuitively one either frames as a photographer or edits or curates. So I'm referencing what's not included, which very often we don't think about. I very much think when I read a newspaper or magazine, I think about what I'm not seeing, not just what is being shown. So I want to sort of privilege what's left out. I don't think Molotov Man becomes the iconic image for me until I see him reproduced in Nicaragua. And I think for me, Molotov Man is about the reappropriation of a historical photograph by the people and the place from which it comes. So I wanted to dissect and deconstruct the whole notion of selection that I was starting to experience in a way that I had never known about. And I wanted to provoke people to think about what they were seeing in magazines or what they were missing. I then discovered the multiple ways in which this image began to live. And it had a life in Nicaragua, it had a life internationally. It was this whole question of who owns history. And I kept discovering new ways in which this image becomes a symbol. So I'm trying to address the fact that the image maker or the one who's in the image doesn't have any control over the context in which the image might be used. The next sequence is about how he's painted on walls, and those walls are erased because the power of the image reminds a population about an insurrectional period. There's a vote and an election, and so that wall and that shift between the memories, the legends, and what's going to be the future. He's seen as an icon stenciled to mobilize a popular militia against the Contra Wars. So this is all embedded in history and the representation of history. He comes back to his hometown as a monument. So it's both an image of a decisive moment, and it challenges the notion of a decisive moment because time goes on and the image lives. It is a moment of time in time.